Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to EIG's first in a series of webinars focused on scaling innovation for impact, how to start, scale, and sustain entrepreneurial ventures in a digital world. With our guest panelist, Aaron Parr, CEO of enroute.io in the great state of Florida, and Dr. Irene Lejic, founder and CEO of I'm sorry, Irene, IALS Consulting in the great state of Delaware. And I'm Jim DeVries, founder of Enhance International Group in the great state of Pennsylvania. We appreciate you taking the time today to attend today's webinar. Please do ask questions throughout, comments. We want this to be as interactive as possible. This series is about how to start, scale, and sustain entrepreneurial ventures in a digital world again. So with that, just want to go through the deliverables today. The deliverables start with framework for scaling innovation, strategies to connect technology with business execution, and actionable insights for startups and entrepreneurs, and clear links to the bottom line impact. So again, we welcome your suggestions throughout the webinar. Please do enter into the chat. The slides will be with you within a week of the webinar. With that, I'll turn it over to Irene for an introduction. Irene.
Hi, all. Thanks for joining. I'm Irene Lejic, ILS Consulting, have over 30 years of manufacturing experience. Started out as R&D in DuPont, had 27 years there, growing into management roles in manufacturing technology, engineering, and leading PSM and fire protection. After that, I led as Vice President of Design Engineering at Covanta, and then led operations for the biogas plants in Air Liquide in the United States. Key focused areas for ILS Consulting are solving the customer's pain points and shining the light on opportunities, focusing on continuous improvement, operational excellence, taking a look at engineering and staffing and how do we optimize folks, as well as any ad hoc program management. Think of me as your variable resource for rent a director of engineering or rent an ops leader, and I can come and assist. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. As Jim was kind enough to introduce me, my name is Aaron Parr. I'm the founder and CEO of enroute.io. My background is in chemical engineering. I'm also a Lean Six Sigma black belt. I've spent most of my time in the climate tech industry, and I started my company 2 years ago after watching too many hard technology startups with really, really fascinating and promising technology burn through their runway, making the same avoidable operational mistakes. And as someone that grew up in operations, in plants, I found that to be really discouraging. So I started a company around helping solve those operational issues around scaling up new technology. So at enroute, our mission is radically simple: help see which 2 to 3 critical decisions could potentially bankrupt a hard tech startup in the first 12 to 24 months. We don't do that through additional dashboards or whatever the newest hype technology is. Although we do use AI enhanced systems and statistical modeling. But our goal is really to enhance your team's expertise rather than replace it. So I dropped the AI word, so let's talk about the elephant in the room. Everyone says AI is going to transform your business. But here's what people won't tell you. AI without good process discipline is just paying to automate your existing bad processes or bad behaviors. And so it can amplify your problems. And that's really, really where we sit in as enroute.io. Just 3 examples here on how we've helped startups in the past. Best practice integration. So this is ensuring that you have standards and important work processes and they're easily accessible to spread throughout your organization. Pre-work polling is something we set up for teams that really struggled to prepare and have really impactful meetings. And startup life is very busy, right? And so when you do have a meeting with all the right people in the room, you want to make sure it's highly effective. So we actually built some technology to help them there. And then our core technology is smart RCA automation. I'll talk a little bit more about that today. But really, what I wanted to get across here is yes, there's a lot of cool technology out there, but ultimately, building a startup and building Enroute.io for me hasn't just been a journey about technology. And so I'm excited to share some stories of my journey today on entrepreneurship and how it relates to that. So great to be here. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Aaron. With that, just want to give you a brief overview of Enhance International Group, formed in 2017, and we have over 80 partners in it. And really, if you look at the 80 partners, we really have that entrepreneur mindset. That is one thing that's pretty clear within the EIG group. And from my own background, my dad had 30 inventions, had his own company, so I grew up in that environment as a kid. And so I kind of inherited that mindset. So I love entrepreneurial mindsets and I love trying to make it work and I love enabling others. I've worked in R&D to manufacturing to sales and service in the field. So I've kind of been around a lot of different areas. And this is a passion of mine is how do we go, grow and harness this, which really brings us to the first slide here on industry transformation. Obviously, we're talking about AI, agentic, all the new buzzwords, but at the end of the day, what is it? It's we're going through this major transformation, and part of that major transformation is we have operational technology that is disjointed and has been disjointed, and Industry 4.0 is trying to get it there. And then we have information technology, which is off to an island. We're now bridging those two worlds together to drive efficiency, safety, sustainability on the operational technology perspective. And then from the barriers that we are incurring is legacy systems, data silos, and trust and change management challenges. This is what we hear in the news. These are all the barriers that are out there, and really these are the opportunities for startups to solve these problems. And a lot of the solutions that you'll hear today are focused on solving these problems. So we'll get into that a little bit later. For the agenda today, we're going to go into why does entrepreneur matter now? And then we'll get into the three-legged stool of success. Irene will take us through that and what we think are the three major areas or legs of the stool that need to be addressed. And we'll go into deep detail throughout this webinar. And then we'll look at the importance of linking people, process, data, technology. Aaron will cover that. We'll get into some case studies and throughout, and then we'll wrap it up with some action frameworks and takeaways and a 30-day challenge for you if you will so take it. With that, uh, let's just start off with a quote from somebody who's been in innovation for quite a while, Dr. Elizabeth Chen, an innovation strategist. And she says that innovation requires breaking free from the constraints of bureaucracy and traditional thinking. You know, get out of the box. And the most successful entrepreneurs don't just solve problems, they redefine them by questioning fundamental assumptions about what's possible. So you also often hear the art of the possible when we're talking about innovation and those type of techniques. And just a little bit about uh, uh, Liz. She's been around. In 2016, she was trained through the human-centered design of the world-renowned design of IDEO in San Francisco. So she's been around. She's been in this for quite a while. I like what she said there, so we're quoting her to kick us off. With that, I'll turn it over to Aaron. Aaron?
Thanks, Jim. So Dr. Elizabeth Chin really nailed it with that quote, huh? The most successful entrepreneurs don't just solve problems, they redefine them by questioning fundamental assumptions. And I'm going to get into that a little bit more on this slide. So let me start with an example. 5 years ago, a power generation company came to my company and asked us to help with their capacity problem. Their ask was help us build a new line or facility. Pretty standard request. At the time, I had done a lot of capital engineering projects. This one was a little out of my wheelhouse, to be frankly honest with you. Is It started at $50 million, but the highest option was over $200 million in capital outlay. So, depending on what path we wanted to take, how much money we wanted to spend, increasing their capacity started at an 18-month timeline. Uh, but there were some potential roadmaps on the Gantt chart that are roadblocks, excuse me, on the Gantt chart that could have put us over 3 or 4 years. So we took a step back and we asked ourselves, just like Dr. Chin recommended we do, right? We questioned a little deeper. What if we didn't need more equipment? What if our constraint here wasn't capacity? And we tried to reframe the problem and dig into the problem a little bit deeper. And ultimately, by asking ourselves that question, we ended up saving the client $50 million that they didn't need to spend in capital. Because they didn't have a capacity problem. They ended up having an operational consistency problem. And so that's really what I want to get into on this slide. Unprecedented challenge and changes and chaos. Like we're running out of capacity, we need to act right now. That's where the opportunity in entrepreneurship is. So if you look over here on the slide, we've got 4 bullets, right? Industry 5.0. So there's countless startups today building in Industry 5. They found a niche more often than not, and I've found some really exciting projects around human-machine collaboration. And what does that look like out in a field, out in an industrial plant? So really exciting opportunity there for startups. Second, a technology revolution. And what do I mean by that? Well, the cost of satellites has dropped over 100x in the last decade. The cost of sensors, just thermocouples, pressure sensors, IR, LiDAR, all of these sensors, depending on which one you're talking about, somewhere between 10 and 1,000x cost reduction over the last decade, as well as we have newer technologies that have recently gained steam, like AI and digital twins. Even though both of those technologies have been around for a while, they've been getting a lot more attention in recent days. So all of these technologies have dropped in price by orders of magnitude, which means the problems we can go out and solve with them have also expanded. Sustainability imperatives. So countries, as well as other organizations, have been mandating sustainability. Ultimately, what the markets have said is that this is a requirement, but it can't be at the cost of performance. So we have a lot of exciting startups working to build sustainable technology, while also beating out the incumbents, the non-sustainable incumbent technology, whatever that may be, in performance as well. And then anytime you see market disruption, that rebuilds the value chain, which means you can come back and look at opportunities inside those market disruptions. And so really, here's my conclusion on this slide. All of these trends are really a perfect storm for both startups and entrepreneurs, which are startups inside a larger organization. So the question ultimately is, there's going to be chaos. Do you want to see that as a problem or an opportunity as a startup? So if you're a startup, your advantages are obvious. You're fast. You're not dragging in legacy systems like Jim said, and you can pivot in 48 hours if need be. So that's your competitive advantage. Irene?
So we think about opportunities for startups and either intra or intrapreneurs. And so the thing that you want to think about is what are our startups' advantages? Agility, speed to market, the freedom to disrupt the traditional models, those are all critical things. You can't be slow. Other advantages are within a company, if you're an intrapreneur, you have access to resources as well as an established customer base You have that infrastructure, you have the funding from your company as well as industry connections. Um, getting partnership models like a corporate venture capital or accelerator programs and open innovation platforms allows you to cross boundaries. And then new opportunities. The Industry 5.0 will create those gaps between the legacy systems as well as emerging technologies, but it requires those thinking outside of the box and getting those voices beyond your current scope to think what is possible. So your innovation opportunities really need to focus on several areas, including AI and machine learning, sustainability solutions, any advanced materials, process digitization, as well as a circular economy. Thank you.
With that, we'll go to the polling question. What is the biggest bottleneck that's slowing your best ideas or projects from becoming real, adoptable solutions? So with that, we have a few seated ones in here, but we love to hear more of these ideas. Funding is generally the proverbial issue, right? That's the one that always comes on. We don't have, how do you fund it and bootstrap it? And we'll get into that a little bit later. Aaron, Irene, do you want to take on any of these other ones?
Sure, Jim. I like one person to do a team's worth of work, as I've personally lived and struggled with that myself. I think there's a couple of strategies here. One, especially as a founder who's there from day 0 to 50, wherever you hopped on the train, but you hopped on early. Delegation is one of the tasks and ones without a clear answer of growing that business. And it's a fine line to walk, because as a founder, there are certain roles that you need to take on initially. If you're the CEO of a new startup, you need to be the first person to sell whatever product you're selling. So obviously, eventually, there will be a point where you need to delegate out to a sales team and hire a sales team, but figuring out exactly when in that growth, that's the art.
Thanks, Aaron. Irene?
Um, Getting others on board when you have an idea, selling the vision, I think, is critical, and having them understand what is that opportunity and what's the value add, and getting them excited and just as passionate about it as you are. That to me is the difficult portion because quite often, especially if you're working, in a larger chemical company or a larger company, how many people have heard, oh, well, we've always done it this way. Okay, that's good. Did it work? No. So you have to be able to sell that vision and get people on board. And so those mindset and behavior shifts are absolutely critical. I do see some additional ones, Jim, on here.
Yeah, I think first to be second is a very interesting one. It's got me thinking. I mean, there's a theory. Do you want to be first or you want to be first to be second, right? Do you want to be second and be good? Do you want to be a fast follower or do you want to be in first in a new area? And sometimes being a fast follower can yield fantastic results. So that's that is, I think that's what they mean, but maybe Aaron and Irene, you have a different take on that.
Yeah. Actually, one of the most famous entrepreneurs currently, and currently the head of the most expensive company in the world, NVIDIA, Jensen Huang actually said earlier this year in an interview that if you look back at NVIDIA's journey, they were actually not the first semiconductor company. They were the total opposite. They weren't second
Yep.
or third either. They were the last semiconductor. And
Right.
so in that interview, he really said like there are advantages to each of those strategies. They're just different strategies. Um, it turned out for the semiconductor industry, being the last ended up being the best competitive advantage. So
Yeah.
I think My takeaway from that is there's a strategy to be first, there's a strategy to be the second, and there's a strategy to be last. I think it really, which sounds like, okay, there's no strategy, but really, I think, if you want to be first, I think that strategy makes sense. If you're going into an industry that has a highly defensible moat. So if you're first, for example, like cloud services, being first to provide cloud services was a fantastic competitive advantage because changing cloud service providers is one of the hardest things an IT department in a company can undergo. So AWS has won that battle, at least for now, because they went first. But that type of dynamic doesn't exist in every industry. If it's easy to switch, then it might be best to go last or second. Learn from the first company in your industry's mistakes and don't repeat them. So you're in a better position when you get to the finish line.
So I'm reading the chat here. Mark says first would be second, also refers to customers not wanting to be first implementation. Yeah. Nobody wants to be the guinea pig, which I think connects to focusing on customer unmet needs. So if you have an invention, even if you're in any of those categories, if you don't understand what the customer unmet needs are, then you're probably not going to be novel enough to be able to be competitive in the marketplace. So I see that very often as people come up with great ideas, but they're not really aligning to what the customers, relating to the customer's world. So I see that often happen a lot. And the other comment from Dan was, love the phrase fast follower. I guess he's preached that concept for years to his clients. And yeah, there's nothing wrong with being a fast follower. But again, it's a decision you make and it's a strategy. And keep with your strategy and keep it visible and make sure everybody understands that's what you're doing. And then you will be much more successful. Don't keep these things hidden, which I see sometimes is one of the barriers of implementing these type of strategies. With that, I think we can go on forever, but let's move on. Irene?
So our agenda next step is we're going to talk about the three-legged stool of success. The leg one is invention and opportunity. Leg two is the market fit and selling the vision. And leg three is financing and scaling. You need all three to be able to stand and thrive as a venture. So let's think about leg one, invention and opportunity and discovery, spotting the problems that are worth solving. What is that opportunity? Accidental as well as intentional innovations. Number two, selling that vision. I talked about that earlier. It is really about making people as passionate about your concept as you are, translating it to what is the value add, overcoming any biases that may occur. A lot of people like to hear stories, and so don't just throw, death by PowerPoint, but tell the story of how it's going to benefit them. And then leg three, there's a couple ways to do this. You can be bootstrapping it yourself. You can get, venture capital. How do we get credibility before you're scaling it up? And scaling inside a corporation versus outside. So you're going to hear about all three of those coming forward. Next. Okay, so let's talk about leg number one, invention and opportunity and discovery. So you think about the theory of constraints. Every system has one constraint limiting its performance. And so what is limiting it? And how can you shift it? How can you adjust that? The paradigm shifts. Boundaries are not limitations, but it could be okay. So how do we solve that? Why do we have to have that boundary? Ask those questions why. Identify those as a potential opportunity to get past that boundary. Some of the most significant breakthroughs often come from working within those constraints. And so thinking about your boundary conditions, your constraints, it's really not not something that is the enemy and stay away from it, but really focus on it to how do we leverage that? How do we turn that to our advantage? Next. So we think about an accidental innovation. Penicillin. Uh, there is a critical thing that happened here. It was an unexpected discovery. Fleming had as everyone knows, a petri dish that was contaminated, and mold inhibited the bacterial growth. So instead of just tossing it out, there was an investigation, and it led to antibiotics that have saved countless lives. Um, keep going. Okay, so it wasn't fully realized until, Howard Florey and Ernest Chain developed methods to isolate it and mass produce it. By 1945, production was industrialized, saving countless lives and revolutionizing medicine. And I think in 1945, they received the Nobel Peace Prize. So it was Fleming, Howard Florey, and Ernest Chain. However, I want to point out that Howard Florey's wife was one of the critical inventors who was not recognized. And so I'm going to put a note out to remember those folks in history that need to be recognized. If it wasn't for her, those large-scale trials to test it out would have not occurred. So keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Irene. So, did we notice the second half of that story? It took a decade for the Floreys and Chain to figure out mass production. So, discovery isn't enough. You need a pathway to go from lab to market. And that leads us to leg number 2, market fit and selling the vision. So, as a technical founder, I say this with kindness. This is where most technical founders struggle. I'm a chemical engineer. I personally had to try multiple times to get this right within my own company, as Irene and Jim can both attest. So for the engineers and scientists and other STEM majors in the room, you've got brilliant science. You understand the problem better than anyone on earth. And then you walk into a boardroom and executives are checking their phone after 90 seconds saying, who's next? So why does this happen? Because you're speaking engineering when the board and executives are looking for business outcomes. And so what does that look like? A founder will say something like, our AI model achieves 94% accuracy in predicting equipment failure. Great, right? Well, the executive is going to hear, okay, this person loves their algorithm. We're geeks, right? We all are in love with our own technology. So what should that founder have said? We prevent $2 million in unplanned downtime per year. Your maintenance team gets 48-hour advanced warning instead of discovering failures during production runs. Same technology, but it's a completely different value proposition. Now, second on the left here is paradigm bias. The opposite, but also equally common thing to what Irene mentioned earlier, we've tried that before, or we've always done it this way is, we tried this before. So we tried predictive maintenance in 2015. It didn't work. And in this case, you're not fighting technology skepticism. You're fighting like learned helplessness or complacency in that business. And so how do you overcome that with change management? So the key to leg 2 is this framework over here on the right: market validation, value proposition, storytelling is a really powerful one, and stakeholder buy-in. So these are essentially the tools in your toolbox for finding that elusive product market fit and being able to sell your vision to your customers when you found that. So not only does that mean being able to sell your vision to the customers, but as Irene explained earlier, it also means being able to sell it to your potential employees so that they'll join you on your journey to build a business. So here's my main takeaway for leg 2. It really is that the best technology doesn't win. The best communicated technology wins. Jim, could you please share with us some examples of what leg 2 looks like in action, please?
Yes, sure. So back in my days in the 90s at GE, we had a challenge. And it's the same challenge they're going through right now. And that challenge is how to make more units on the same footprint. GE had done in aircraft engines and power systems, we had big factories, but the demand just skyrocketed like 4 or 5x, and we couldn't hit the market demand. So the traditional approach is to say, oh, we'll just build another factory. But we had implemented lean, a lot of lean and Six Sigma in the manufacturing areas and throughout the entire company, a lot of change management, as we call it today, and CAP and so forth. But we weren't getting to where we needed to, and we had to move fast to create this competitive edge. And so a number of master black belts across the company, mainly in the power systems and aircraft engines businesses, started getting into this concept of stability, stabilize before you optimize, actually something that Deming said back in the 40s. So it's not a new concept, but how do you apply it in today's world? Well, that program ended up driving a huge increase in throughput on the same footprint, where we were able to get 2 to 3x volume through those factories, taking lean to the next level. So we talked a little bit about that yesterday with optimal ops. And the problem with lean is you can lean out so far, but you don't have the visibility of the data. The data doesn't come into it. And so it's really blending those two things together and getting to the variability of the process. And so what happened was, as it says here, 2 to 3 x improvement in throughput. And of course, no new production lines. That's a good zero to have. And $1 billion in estimated capital savings. And it not only helped them there, but again, we took these concepts in power systems, we applied them throughout our companies, and we were able to hit the market faster, meet the demand more. And we moved from like a 40% market share to like a 70% market share because we were able to scale with the demand. So this is just an example, not trying to sell stable ops or optimal ops, but I'm saying is somebody had the vision to say we can take it another step further within the same footprint and put the minds together. How do we solve this problem? And then sell that vision to management to make it happen. Of course, you had to have a leader to focus and say, we got to figure this out. So that's another thing in a large corporation, having a leader that sets that vision to say, how are we going to accomplish this is a big winner for large corporations. So again, this optimal ops was then leveraged in this waste recovery plant a number of years after that, and we applied this across this waste recovery plant across their top 12 plants, saving 30, 40, 50 million, and it's still going on to optimize the process. So we're getting to how do you make decisions not waiting for the end of the shift. Again, the concept is you're making decisions based on data in real time, and you're making those decisions, uh, much more efficiently. And this concept is being used right now with one of the EIG's partners, Creatosoft, where they have digitized that through the digital twins and are gaining in tremendous amount of throughput for their clients, and they have over 60 digital twins operating globally as we speak. So again, it's thinking out of the box, but it's, was there a need? Well, if there's a need, a demand need, how do you get more throughput on the same footprint? That is the need. And selling the vision is, can that be done? A lot of people said, no, it can't be done. So a lot of change management as what Irene and Aaron were mentioning before. So we've taken all of these within the EIG portfolio of partners into what we call Industry 5.0, the path of optimized operations. And in here, from site assessment all the way through the digital twin we talked about, facility IoT, Internet of Thing automation, having a centralized ERP that actually works, Aaron's smart RCA, AI visions from Arvist, tool consumptions from another partner, and strategic model yet from another partner. So what we're doing here is we're selling the vision of complete transformation for any situation, a new facility, a existing facility, and then we're embedding AI where it's an enabler, and AI is in the loop. So keeps the human in the loop with agentic and using all the latest buzzwords of AI, and having those type of folks in our team. So that's another example of a optimized operations using uh, for the market fit and selling leg two. So with that, we just want to show another offering that we have that is trying to address the point where you're in a factory and you're looking to drive. Welcome to the future of safe op. I'm sorry, looking to drive uh, efficiency of the folks on the floor. So you go into a factory, or you're doing your rounds in a factory or in a plant, and you can imagine you're using clip charts, flip charts, you're using different things throughout, but it's all manual and it's observation. And to be able to digitize an entire facility all the way soup to nuts, it's not practical. So this is an answer to that. And we'll listen to the video here for a minute. Future of safe operations in the chemical industry. Effie is your intelligent audio companion, joining you during daily walkthroughs, guiding your checks, and capturing vital data as you go. As you move through the plant, Effie reads meters, checks valve positions, and monitors pressure levels using voice and visual cues, offering contextual guidance based on what you're seeing and hearing. During your shift, Effie listens carefully, taking notes, logging events, and creating a structured summary of completed tasks and safety observations for the next team's briefing. Need a protocol on the spot? Effie retrieves only what you need from internal safety libraries using secure RAG, keeping your data private and your workers equipped with the right guidance. Secure, domain-specific AI agents bring intelligence to chemical plant operations, guiding workers, automating decisions, and delivering real-time protocols, all while protecting sensitive data and intellectual property. Workers rely on accurate, up-to-date protocols to make critical decisions. But what if the right information was always just a question away? So that's an example of a new technology out there that we're trying to sell. Again, we have to meet the unmet needs. As are the needs being met? And that's our challenge on scaling up for this. So with that, we're going to end leg two and turn it over to Irene for leg three. Irene?
Thank you, Jim. All right. So financing and scale up. You know what? I think we need that video of that guy yelling, "Show me the money." Anyway,
Yeah.
we should have done that. Financing and scaling up. This is hard to do, especially if you're funding this all by yourself. And I think everyone, has those type of stories. So you need to decide and come up with a strategy on how do you transform that innovation into something sustainable. So thinking about your funding journey, you might have bootstrapped, saved some money to seeking venture capital. You might have gotten some strategic partnerships to corporate resources. That's critical to think about. And there's pluses and minuses with both. I mean, if you're a sole bootstrapping, then all those decisions are yours, and you have that freedom to operate. When you have venture capital partnerships, you have to incorporate their vision as well. Growth strategies, having credibility before scaling, getting that traction is going to be absolutely critical. And then that will allow you to expand that infrastructure. You want to think about your scaling context. If you're a startup versus a corporate entrepreneur, they're both going to have challenges and advantages. The best way I could think about it is if you are in a lab and you developed a new molecule, okay, you're not going to go to full scale right away. You're going to scale it up into a 20-liter reactor into the pilot plant before you scale it up, and that is a journey. All along the way, you need to make sure you establish credibility that, hey, this stuff works. Um, Getting that strategic funding is going to be critical. So as you need capital, you're going to have to align that with that funding source as well as their growth objectives. What is your sustainable business model? If you're a team of one versus a team of five versus a team of 50, your business is going to look quite different. And then as you're building your program up, think about operational excellence. Some of the biggest things that is difficult is making the leap from R&D to operations, where you have some R&D lab operation procedures, and then you get into the factory, and they're going to be pretty tight about tolerances. They're going to be pretty crisp about what you need to do in terms of the operational procedures and the rigor that has to be done. And so that's another critical piece so that you don't fail as you're growing. Next.
All right. So, who here has seen the Marvel movies, specifically Avengers Endgame? I saw it in theaters. I thought it was a fantastic movie. So, if you haven't, please go watch it. But that's what we're going to talk about here. Essentially, where can we end? We're building a business. We're scaling up a new technology. Where does this end? So, we've highlighted here really three paths, and there's no right answer. The only right answer is for your specific context. So, why is that? Here's what people are missing. You don't need to decide which of these paths we're going to lay out for you on the first day. In fact, you wouldn't make the right choice likely anyway. You need to build credibility first, as Irene said, and then you can choose your financing path based on the doors that open and as the business evolves to what type of business you're trying to build. Okay, so path one is essentially without a VC. Sorry, we're showing. I'm gonna go a little bit out of order. Thank you.
I'll just put them all up.
I appreciate it. So path one is without a VC. You build a lifestyle business or niche dominance, and you keep control. You scale slower, but you're profitable from year 2, 3, 4. Nobody can fire you, right? Lifestyle business typically. Path two is really what we see over on the far left here. This is typically with like a silent investor, could be VC, could be angel investors, could be private equity. Typically what this looks like is you get capital, you hit milestones, you maybe IPO, or maybe you get acquired. Your investors are happy and you mostly kept your vision intact. You have to be a little bit more scrappy because the more money you take, typically the more control you lose. And that brings me to path three. Now, I wanted to touch on this one last because this one really gets the most attention. This is the path with the loud startup accelerators, loud venture capital. The reality is that while this gets the most attention in the media, 99.5% of businesses are not venture backable businesses in that traditional sense. So this path requires a couple of things. It requires you blitz scale. It requires you shoot for unicorn status. I mean, your initial business plan has to have billions of dollars in projected market cap. You have to go after extremely high visibility, and you have to pursue massive growth at all costs. So what are some of the consequences of doing something like that? You might lose your company culture. Your team might burn out too early. Or what happens more often than you'd think is you as the founder and CEO gets replaced by your board and they bring in a professional CEO. Now, none of these paths are wrong. With the traditional VC one, since it gets talked about the most, I just wanted to highlight some of the concerns that you should be weighing. But you need to know which game you're playing before you take the money. And ultimately, this should be an analytical decision on what you want out of your company and where you want your company to go. So moving on to the next diagram, this really shows the reality of scaling. So notice how many different off-ramps there are. An IPO is just one potential outcome. An acquisition from a larger company in your field could be another. And bootstrapping all the way to profitability is yet another, although usually you don't shoot for as high with those types of business models. So the question shouldn't be, as most people venture out and ask themselves, how do I get to IPO? The question really should be, what's the outcome that aligns with my vision and my team's capacity and what I want this business to be? Because if you're optimizing for something like an IPO, a really high exit value, but your team wasn't prepared for that and they burn out at Series B, you failed, even if you have $50 million in the bank because you lost your team. All right, moving on. Jim, could you take us into some of the tactical elements of this? How do you actually scale?
So when you scale, you're really looking at these three gears here. Do you have sufficient capital to keep the lights on, so to speak? And that could be investors or it could be you yourself. So that is generally the bottom line gear and the foundational part of your ecosystem that you're building with your new company. Your time to solvency is always the question is how much revenue do you need to generate until you break even? And then how scalable are you beyond there? What's the market share? The market, what is the market and what can is the market share that you're going to be able to capture? So again, the scaling path, pilot projects, with early adopters, you're looking for those. The enterprise rollouts with validated solutions, industry-wide adoption through partnerships and ecosystem. So it's always a give and take. So what are you willing to give up in order to grow? So that is the biggest challenge of entrepreneurs when they start off is they want to grow fast, but they don't want to give up anything. But then they're going to grow slow. So what if I give up more? Then can I grow faster? And that's the idea of the silent investor coming in and because the silent investor goes, I can help you grow. You need more capital. What do you need? You need salespeople. You need marketing. Do you need more R&D? Is your product even ready for production yet? All those things need to be addressed. But at the end of the day, you need to know that break-even margin. At what volume do you need to achieve in order to overcome your costs? Now, there's some ways you grow. You grow if you want to grow slow, you can keep yourself solvent, time to solvency. You can be solvent early on and you can keep solvent, but then you don't grow. So we all know the Amazon Bezos story in that he purposely grew fast and always showed that he wasn't making any money until he got big enough. So his goal was to always be losing money, right? And growing his company, Amazon. I always want to lose money. Why? Because then I'll have more investors and then the investors will drive the growth and I can grow fast. So there's that approach. And then there's other approach that says, oh, do you want to be a $20 million company? Do you want to be a $40 million? Do you want to get to 20 or 40 and stop? Which is what happens to a lot of companies because people burn out and they go, I don't want to grow anymore. I'm very happy with my 10% net income and my two houses and boats. So this is what the challenge that you have and Aaron, the previous chart is what path do you take? You very often you'll see people start off on one path and switch paths over time. And so for financing and scaling up, there's different environments require different scaling strategies. Again, inside corporations, entrepreneurs, there's advantages of starting inside a company. You have that infrastructure cost that a company has to get through, and that's sometimes underestimated when you go from being a entrepreneur to an entrepreneur, you don't realize how much the company having that corporate umbrella on top really helps you and to get you out into the marketplace, even from brand awareness perspective. So if it is an internal product, you can leverage that in order to help you grow. And outside, of course, you have the agility. It's your own baby, so to speak. You have the freedom from legacy systems, but at the same time, you're going to have other challenges because you're going to be short of resources and you're going to be looking for fractional resources to support you. And so there's no right or wrong here. It's a different focus. So generally in a corporate, you're working with cross-functional teams, trying to get bits and pieces of people within a company with a lot of talent. You'll do some internal pilots and you'll get business integration. Just don't take the eye off of the customer because sometimes we run into that problem where we just are too internally focused in the corporate world and you're not innovative enough, meaning you're not listening enough to the customer. And then if you're starting up and scaling, then that minimum viable product, hey, that's important no matter what, corporate or startup company, but it's going to be really important for you to define that and create that brand with yourself and your company and make sure that the market really needs it. And then you're going to have to create some kind of value of yourself in your, it's no longer that you work for the big company. You have to create that value yourself in what you spread to the marketplace. So that's the challenge when you're doing it. So, you need the bottom line is you're going to need strategic partnerships. Both Aaron and Irene mentioned that. You need partners to help you. You need lots of support, and you can't do it on your own. So with that, we're going to go through a side-by-side comparison, starting off with Irene.
All right, so a couple of case studies here. Farm to fuel. This is one that's near and dear to my heart. I work with some great partners within EIG to look at this challenge. And so let's take a look. The challenge right now is farmers are facing declining exports. They have tariffs. Right now, projected is $6 billion plus losses. And you know what? A lot of them are working on the thin edge anyway. And so this is not sustainable. Some of the farmers are actually looking at using biodigesters to convert the agricultural waste into renewable energy, creating biomethane. There are some folks who have piloted it in various co-ops. This is a growing industry now, and that can aid them into significant environmental and economic benefits. Some of the things that happen here is for example, if it's a dairy farm, the cow manure is turned into a product. It's turned into methane, and you can either sell it right directly to the grid, or you can convert it to electricity. The manure, there is a waste reduction there. You have a new revenue stream and you have financial sustainability. However, a lot of these folks aren't from the operations industry. And so how do you optimize within that scale? Because this model is highly dependent on government incentives and the RINs. And so you have to make sure that it's financially stable, that they're optimized as much as possible for maximizing their revenue. Next one.
Thanks. So we've talked about optimal ops already, so I won't go through it in deep dive into it. But what we've seen is optimal ops has gone through a transformation where we're bringing in digital twins with our partner Creatosoft and leveraging that through other means. So we're bringing in other partners also on how do we drive these process improvements to meet the demand of the marketplace. So uh, a manufacturing facility, these principles are what Creatosoft does. In these large chemical refineries and power plants, they're using other techniques, but they're not leveraging these principles. So what we're doing is, depending on the industry, we'll look to find those unmet needs and then tailor optimal ops to drive that improvement, from a manufacturing, from an OEE perspective, from a power plant perspective. It can be increasing uptime and capacity of the power plants and reliability. And with that, I'll turn it over to Aaron.
Thank you, Jim. So let me show you all how this is played out within my own company. Quick overview, but mainly I want to highlight some of the ugly failures and why they ended up ultimately putting me in a better spot. So at Enroute, what do we make? We make a decision intelligence enabler. We help hard technology startups who were making critical decisions in their scale-up plan, their initial growth plan, using incomplete information, assumptions, and often shooting from the hip. So this was not my first pitch or ICP, which is individual customer profile. Who am I targeting with my business? And ultimately, that was a failure when I first started my business. I did not start with hard technology startups. I did not start with startups that were trying to take technology or a new process and commercialize it. I went after really large incumbent companies, and that wasn't the right business fit. They didn't have the problem that I solve, which is that moving fast and trying to make critical decisions with incomplete information. They didn't feel that enough to want to feel the need to go after my initial pitch, because your first pitch is never going to be perfect, and your first product is going to be far from perfect. And so ultimately, I learned that it wasn't good fit with the right customer. And when I transitioned to helping hard technology startups, funny enough, full circle moment, I built a good pitch product and business with them that now I'm able to go back to some of those larger companies and say, are there any entrepreneurs within your company that are trying to scale new technologies? Here's how I can help. And that message resonates with them now. Whereas if I just, I spent the first few months of my company knocking on those same companies' doors and hearing crickets. So it's important to learn from your failures. And that leads me into the second half here. What do? We build what we call compass style modeling. It's essentially techniques to give those startup founders and their boards the foresight to walk through their scale up plans. And the way we do that is we essentially stage gate decisions. So we lay out what your roadmap of critical decisions are, and then we already piece out, if you see this, then you go with decision A, and if you see this, you go with decision B. And so that results in 40% faster decision making and 10x acceleration and executive clarity. And we do that by providing consistently objective perspective. So essentially the pattern with all three of those offerings was that we identified a constraint, we built a solution that converted it into an opportunity, and then we scaled that using those partnerships to help fill in the gaps where we as founders had. Irene?
Thanks, Aaron. So let's take a look at the future outlook of what's coming ahead. I can't predict what's going to happen in politics. I can't predict what's going to happen, either with the lottery. I wish I could. But there are some things that we can look at and predict. And so the journey is going to be to more autonomous, resilient, and sustainable operations. So things to think about. First of all, that today look, I think I worked in plants like that. So it's dusty, not the best technology. So how do we optimize those facilities? And it could be a chemical plant, it could be a manufacturing process. How do we optimize that with AI-driven decision loops to help do some predictive? How do we continuously tune this, not only within the one plant, but across the fleet that you have in your operations? You need to think about your sustainability and being carbon aware. We might have hit the brakes or hit the pause button here in the United States, but the rest of the world is going forward with sustainability, and being carbon aware is going to be critical. It's creating new opportunities in the circular economy that we need to be taking advantage of. And then having some resiliency so that this way, if there are issues, you can overcome them. So you're going to go from a digital transformation to some more autonomous ecosystems. Next.
So with that, we're going to move to the next section on scaling the digital world. Aaron?
Thank you, Jim. So this is the PPDT framework. It stands for people, process, data, and technology. And it's in that order for a reason. Most companies start with technology, and it's easy to fall into that trap. Let's buy this AI platform. They're going to fix all our problems, plus it'll be fun to play with, right? Then they realize they don't have clean data to feed it, and AI doesn't make sense without good data. And then they realize their processes weren't designed for real-time decisions. So the value prop of that AI use doesn't even make sense. And then they realize that their people don't trust the system at all, or maybe even leadership's decisions, making this project doomed to fail from the start. And that's why that's the backwards approach. You start with people, right? Partnership ecosystems, if you're a startup, talent acquisition, building cross functional teams, open communication, and a culture of honesty and transparency. And then you focus on process. That's what Irene said earlier with operational excellence, Lean Six Sigma, sustainability integration from the start, engineered in, and then data. So this is your cloud infrastructure, real-time analytics, data architecture, could be data lakes, whatever it takes to get your people to have good quality data that they can use. And then finally, you can go to the technology. This is where AI and machine learning come in, digital twins and optimization platforms. Now, the companies that get this order right, they're 3 times more likely on average to successfully scale that, whatever that technological innovation is. And the ones that don't, they waste millions of dollars on technology that sits unused. Jim?
Thanks, Aaron. That brings us to one last case study. We've had quite a number of them throughout here. We're just going to quickly go through this case study from Creatisoft, Emulate Before It's Too Late, Design, Build, Operate. And this is a growth of the digital twin that started off on the right in operations, but now has the tentacles to start from when you design a new facility, construct it, and using change site not only to build and operate the facility, but to perform supply chain risk and resiliency support for the total ecosystem of the company. So AQ, we keep on saying adaptive intelligence. So what is adaptive intelligence? It's about your ability to continuously evolve. It's more than just learning. It's about what you take in new experience and information and use that to shift your behavior, decisions, and approach in real time. Adaptive intelligence is a process that helps you move beyond habitual reactions to a place where you can respond to challenges for clarity, creativity, and purpose. So that was the backbone that Hazy and I were working on to drive this and help uh, the plant, the company, from before the plant is even built or the facility is being built, whether it's a hospital or a manufacturing facility, a power plant, you can lay everything out using digital twins and then construct it and make sure that it goes on time by tracking how you build the power plant in a much more effective manner than maybe being performed today. So you optimize your workflows and then operate your end-to-end facility and taking into account all scenarios, whether it's operational, uh, tactical, or strategic risks. So with that, we'll look back at the um, entering in here into this word cloud. Any other comments here before we move on to the last section?
Yeah, I'll just very briefly. I see initial users there popped up since the last time we ran through this poll. That's something that was not obvious to me starting out. You know, do you make TikTok videos? Do you market on YouTube? Do you pay for Facebook ads? Your initial users, the answer is in your network. Ask your friends, ask your colleagues, ask your network to be your initial users. They might not be your end target customer, but that's okay. That's where you'll learn that if they are or not. So that's really like where the scrappy startup founder comes in, right? Use your network, call people. Don't try the Facebook ads, or at least for me, that hasn't worked for B2B. Um,
It's a good point, Aaron. So with that, we'll just close it out here on some key takeaways. Digital transformation, of course, is creating a wild west opportunities here in the next 2 or 3 years. In 2 or 3 years, who knows what's going to come next? But this is a great time to be an entrepreneur or entrepreneur, uh, just to be innovative and go off and build something. So explore pilot projects, build trusted relationships. At the end of the day, it's going to all come down to relationships. When you see the companies that succeed fast, those are the ones that have lots and lots of relationships. It's never a single person. It's a relationship with a network to bring that idea to life. So with that, I'll turn over to Irene for the 30-day challenge.
All right, so don't get worried. This isn't a 30-day physical fitness challenge. So you're all good there. The 30-day challenge is think about applying one principle from today's webinar to create some measurable impact within your business or your company, or your ideas. So just choose one framework, okay? Whether it's the three-legged stool concept or the PPDT concept, and just implement one key component of it. Um, share your commitment with one other accountability partner within your business or from today's webinar. Reach out to us if you need help. Document your baseline to measure improvement over the next month, and then just report back to us. Send us a note and say, hey, this is what I've learned. And also, your feedback really matters because in future webinars, if we need to expand on further topics, let us know. So again, choose and commit on day one. First assessment, do a internal assessment on the 10th day. How's it going? Do you need to tweak it? Adjust your approach midway through, and then the last week, it's that last week of the month, you're going to do that final push. And then at day 30 is measure where you are, how did you do, and share your results. Any questions?
Well, we're open to stay on and answer any questions or any comments that you may have. Please enter them in the chat. With that, just closing it out with the deliverables, the frameworks for scaling innovation. We covered that. Strategies to connect technology with business execution, actionable insights for startups and entrepreneurs, and clear links to the bottom line impact. So again, as we said at the beginning of the webinar, if you would like to think this webinar should go on, please do contact us and let us know what you'd like to see more of in the future. We'd love to accommodate. And with that, we'll close it out. Irene, final comments?
First of all, I learned so much from working with these two gentlemen as I was scaling up my own business. So I just want to thank you for the journey that we've been on. And I hope you guys have found this valuable as well. Being a technical person, and being an ops gal, I'm pretty straightforward. And learning the marketing leg of the stool was my biggest challenge. And so that and it's not my comfort zone at all. So that was one of my takeaways that I had to work on in my 30-day commitment. So think about what yours is, and hopefully you can grow your great ideas.
Aaron?
Aaron?
Thanks, Irene. It's been truly a pleasure to be on this call with you both. For those on the call, these are two of my favorite entrepreneurs who were also instrumental in helping me build my business. So truly, thank you. It's been a fantastic time. And then to the audience, I want to thank you all for your time and attention today. I know 60 minutes went fast. So if you'd like to continue the conversation, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can reach out through EIG to contact me or visit me on LinkedIn, Aaron Parr, or on my website, inroot.io. And just one last thing before we close. If you are a lab to market startup and you want to be first to be second or third or fourth with some new decision intelligence technology, we are looking for strategic R&D partnerships right now. So that's my pitch. If that's you, let's talk. And if not, have a great day. Jim?
Thanks, Aaron. And I also enjoy Aaron and Irene. They stretch me, and that's good. I need to be stretched. So thank you. I've really enjoyed putting this deck together. It's been a lot of fun. And I'll pitch Effie again because right now Effie is out there and the applications are endless. As you can see, it can be for a website, it can be used for a doctor's office, it can be used in a power plant. So please do reach out from that perspective. So I'll do a little pitch for Effie. And again, thank you all for staying on throughout. We appreciate it and we wish you all the best for the holidays and see you next year.